So you set?
Yeah, there was some way that you could do it so it was on both groups, but I don't see that. Maybe they did away with it.
You got 3 minutes.
Well, that's fine. It might be a little bit late. Might be just a little bit late tonight.
I'm gonna text her and ask her if she's on the Facebook.
Okay. Because everything we're saying is being broadcast. So,
How does she find it?
well, she's in the group. It's the 146.88 group. She's already commented on it today, so I know she knows how to do it. PCRN RagTubeNet will start in a couple of minutes, running a little bit behind, about 2 minutes, 2.5, something like that. All right, it's getting close to 7. Running a little bit behind. This is the going to be the memorial net for K4ITL, but we're going to start it off like regular net. Then I'll do an announcement and talk for a little bit. And we've got the live stream going. It's been going for about 5 or 6 minutes. It's on the 146.880 Facebook group. And I also posted something on the North Carolina Amateur Radio Operators because I used to be able to stream to 2 groups, but I guess they've removed that. I can't figure out how to do it. So we're just doing it in the group that we always do it in. So call in the PCRN VHF 2-meter RagTube net. This is Charles. Call sign's KI4DCR. I'm located in Raleigh, and I'm going to be your net control station for this special net tonight. And I'm going to skip through a lot of this because it's not really pertinent for tonight. So I'm going to have the announcements for tonight. That's going to be all the announcements we're going to do. So we're going to go ahead and check in and get everybody on board first, and same with the Facebook people, and then we'll do the announcement. So any and all stations A through N, Alpha through November, call and we'll get you on the list.
K4GEB, Bob in Cleveland.
KI4DCR.
HJ, Ken in Durham.
All right, let's hold up right there. I got a Ken in Durham and another station. So will the Ken in Durham come back with your full call sign?
K04DHJ.
All right, next station, go ahead.
Yeah, hey Charles, it was me, N4GTI, Will in Raleigh.
N4BNC, Dave and Benson. Be in and out, but listening. K4DCR. W84IHM, Brockton, Wake Forest. Good evening, Charles and Ned. I'll be in and out also, but listening.
KI4DCR. WW4TLB, Thomas, I'm monitoring.
All right, I'm going to stop right there and go through these folks. I got N4GEB, Bob is in. K04DHJ, I got Ken and Durham, I got you in. N4GTI, Will is in. N4BNC, Dave, man, I haven't heard from you in a while. I've got you marked in and out. Brock, WA4IHM's in and out. And Thomas, I'm marking you in, WW4TLB. Any stations I missed as there was some doubling? Anybody else, A through N?
K04SKA, Wallace.
I got you, Wallace. You're real noisy, but you're understandable. And I've got you marked in. Anybody else? All right, stations O through Z, Oscar through Zulu.
KI4DCR. W4TTO, John Lake Forest. KI4DCR. KE4PNT, Randy in Southwest Raleigh. KI4DCR. Please check in and out, John, inside the belt line.
KI4DCR. Please check in 0 RD, Jeff and Henderson.
All right, let me see who I got here. I've got W4TTO, Joe is in, Randy's in, KE4PNT, John inside the belt line is in and out. N4YFU, I got Jeff up in Hennessy. He is in N0RNE. Let me go over some of these internet people real quick. I've got Danny down in Hampstead, KD4RAA, Danny Mustin. And I have Mark N4MQU in Wendell. In Rockingham, used to be Wendell. And I have KF4ESH Chuck in, I think he's down in Hamlet, down that way. And he's also got KF4VNT, and that is Terry. And I've also got a bunch of other people without call signs that are listening. So anybody else A through Z here on the radio, and then I'll get to the announcement.
A4AKB, Susan in Raleigh.
Can you say that call sign, key up, and then wait a second, and then give me the call sign slowly?
WA4 Alpha Kilo Bravo.
I've got you marked in, and I've got you listed as Raleigh. Was there somebody else in there?
K4ITL. Please check in if I can make it. Kilo Mike 4 Tango Charlie van in 4 Oaks.
K4DCR. This is Kilo Foxtrot 4 Alpha India Bravo Ray and Raleigh. Please check me in and out.
All right, I got WA4AKB, Susan and Raleigh. I've got you marked in. KM4TC, Van, I've got you marked in with a great signal. KF4AIB, Ray, I've got you marked in and out. I've got one more here, KM4TCM, Jay in Roanoke Rapids by internet. All right, so I think we all kind of know what the theme is, and I have already gotten 20 check-ins already here. But tonight's net, we will remember and honor Danny Hampton, who became a silent key yesterday around 6 o'clock. Prayers and well wishes to Rose and all the family, sons, daughters, and all of their extended family. Danny will always be an icon in the ham radio community. His knowledge and dedication to the hobby have influenced many a fellow ham. They will never forget his presence, whether it was a rag chew or help with a technical question or a scratchy signal, or any advice in any aspect of ham radio. It was always good to hear Danny on the radio, and Susan helped write up some of this. So tonight we're going to rag chew and share memories of Danny, followed by a final but not forgotten call at the end, because I don't think just a final call net is appropriate for Danny, because he was much larger and will never be a final call because we will never forget him. At least I won't, that's for sure, and I know most other people won't. I know when I first got licensed in 2003, I heard the call sign K4ITL, and all I knew was that Danny was the big cheese with the ham radio. He had his name on the repeaters. I didn't know a thing about him other than he was a little intimidating because he had so much going on in the hobby. But over the years, I got to know him and Rose very well. And Rose's, I guess it's granddaughter, fixed me birthday cakes. And then we started having these ham gatherings. And Danny and Rose would show up, and we all got to go out to dinner and meet up for lunches and stuff such as that. And it was, I had just talked to Danny. I've got a clip on this 146.88 group from last, when was it? It was last Friday morning, the 16th. That a bunch of us were over here on the 88, and Danny chimed in and told Will that his scratchy signal could be fixed by moving up a few feet in the parking lot. And it was right, and it fixed it. And we all hung out over here, and we rag chewed for quite a bit. And it just goes to show you, and I want to emphasize that all of us need to get together as much as we can, be nice to each other, not take each other for granted or the repeaters or anything about the hobby, because we never know when we're not going to have it. And by that mean, I don't mean the hobby. I mean, we never know how much time we have on this planet. So I'm encouraging more fellowship, more in-person gatherings, more people getting in on the nets, and more rag chewing during the off-net times. I want everybody to support Rose, and I have a tentative day of the funeral, which is next Wednesday at 1 o'clock. I have Montlon as the location, and I'm sure she'll correct me if I'm wrong or if there's any more information about it. We've got a ways to go before that, and it'll all be posted online. But I was shocked, blown away. I think I was one of the first people that got notified, and at first I was hoping that it was some kind of one of these internet things that pops up where it's not true. But it was, unfortunately, and I was very sad and still am. So we've got quite a few people checked in between it. More are checking in on the internet as fast as I can write them down. The funeral will be at the McCullers Community Baptist Church. And I will post that on the internet as time permits me to do it. But that is 1 o'clock next Wednesday, is what I have. So I'm not going to do the traditional final call because I don't want Danny to be forgotten in any way, shape, or form. He was at my 60th birthday party at the farmer's market along with 24 other hams. And I want to appreciate, I believe it was Brian Crocker that sent me the notification last night about it and allowed me to spread the word with the hams so everybody could support the family. The visitation will be at 12 noon on March 6th, right prior to the funeral, and that's at the McCullers Community Baptist Church. And I will post directions, links, and all that later on this evening on the Facebook group. So I want folks to talk about Danny, their experiences with him. As I said, I posted a clip of him talking with us from last February's gone by so quick and it's thrown me off because it's the 29th, last Friday morning. I also have a whole video of him as a guest speaker on the net way back. Probably going to repost that. So I'm going to get to the rag cheese because we got a lot of folks. I'm going to start off with Bob N4GEB.
All right, first off, Charles, thanks so much for running the net tonight. I know it's a special net, and I know it's not easy. As far as my contact with Danny, it was minimal. I know that he'd come to the repeater several times to kind of give us an update on the status of where things are at. And one of the things that really struck me about him was the depth of his knowledge. I remember he was talking about the 220, and they were saying how it wouldn't be possible to put it on the WRAL tower because of interference. And he and a couple of others figured it out. And it was probably one of the best and broad coverage 220 nets or 220 frequencies repeaters that we've had. Did meet him at the farmer's market, and it was nice to see him face to face. And I'll just make one last personal note, and that is it's okay to mourn. You know, when we lose people, that's a normal part of the process. We need to come alongside, do everything we can to support the family, surround them the best we can. But again, being stoic about it or just pressing on and, you know, acting like nothing different has happened is not a healthy thing. I'd definitely say take some time, reflect, because we're all only, as one person put, we all have expiration dates, or put it in the scripture, is born man wants to die and then the judgment. So we need to give that some thought. But anyway, again, Charles, thanks so much for organizing this. And with that, I'll turn it back to Net Control. K4ITL, N4GEB.
Thanks, Bob. Well said. I totally agree. I was so blessed to have Danny at the big ham gathering we had back in December of 19 in Zebulon. We had like 40 people down there. That was incredible. Him and Rose were there. It was a big surprise because I didn't really know they were going to be there. And then at my birthday party, and I have a picture that was either taken by, I think it was taken by Thomas Babb, WW4TOB. It's a great picture of Danny with his eyes open and a big smile on his face, and it's on the live stream right now. And that's going to be our background for tonight. All right, our next station is K4DHJ, and that was Ken. Ken, you're up, sir. You're next. All right, one more time, and then maybe he was in and out. K4DHJ, are you around? All right, let's move down to Will, N4GTI. You're up.
Hey, Charles, and everyone on the net. Well, this certainly is a sad occasion. I first met Danny at a ENC Repeater Association meeting. That's Eastern North Carolina Repeater meeting at King's Restaurant in Kinston in 1982 or 1983.
Wow.
I can't recall. He was seated at the head table. And after the meal, he had his hands in an open repeater or some unit component of a repeater. And I did not know before that moment that he was blind. And I was a high school kid. I couldn't believe how his hands would just work their way through the components on the circuit boards as he talked about the different sections and what he was concerned about and modifications, and I thought, wow, this is truly an amazing man. And that was 41 or so years ago. But after that, I went back home, living in Kinston, and I made an 11-element 2-meter beam from old TV aerials, and I put it up on our chimney, and I pointed it west towards the 8A repeater, which was up on the tall tower. At the time, and I was able to talk to Danny and many others like that, and I was so proud of that, and it opened up the whole world of large FM coverage. And when he talked to me, as a boy, I could tell he knew I was a young kid, and he was always complimentary and encouraging, and I just had a ton of respect for him way back then, and that only grew as I learned of his knowledge and his contributions to amateur radio over the years. He's just always been there, kind of a quiet authority, and steered so many of us in the right direction. I'll miss him sorely, and the call sign K4ITL will only mean one thing to me forever. Back to you, Charles. KI4DCR and the net, N4GTI.
I was still in high school back then. I didn't even know what ham radio was back then. And that's my biggest regret about ham radio is why in the world did I not get into it in like the late 80s? And I was into scanners and I had two-way radios. I was in the fire department, but my folks had a myth around it that it was very expensive to get into, which was obviously not true. It was probably more than it is nowadays because, you can buy a Baofeng or something now and get on the air with, for $30-40, and you couldn't do that back then. But there were still ways to get into it that weren't cost prohibitive. I had another couple of stations I just wanted to acknowledge real quick. KM4TCM, Jay in Roanoke Rapids, I think is where he was. KM4NDM, Michael and Wilson, WB4IUI, Dave and Zebulon. So I wanted to acknowledge all those people. And Brian Crocker, KM40X. I've got him in by Facebook too. So next station, we had N4BNC. Dave was in and out. Brock, WA4IHM was in and out. Let's see if Thomas, we can get a rag chew out of him. Thomas, you're up.
Thanks, Charles. Good evening, WW4TLB. I'm trying to get through this. I've known you a long time. Met him when he worked for Johnson's Communications, one of the biggest Johnson radio companies in the southeastern United States. Photographed him many, many times when he won Him of the Year. Went over and did a nice portrait of him. What a great guy. What a great friend. Had the opportunity several months ago to go over and sit down with him and Miss Rose and talk for a couple of hours there at their new home out from Pequay Marina. He's going to be sorely missed. I'll keep praying for Rose. I think she's doing pretty well under the circumstances, and just kind of, like Carl says, we've got to continue to have gatherings and stay in touch with each other. I wish the best to Miss Rose and her family. The 440 repeater group, we have ordered flowers for the funeral, and I'll be taking that over a couple of days to the funeral home a couple of days before. But anyway, that's about it. Tim, sad to hear that Danny has passed away. What a great guy. Oh, one footnote, Danny went to high school at the Governor Moorhead School, and his closest mate was Ronnie Millsap. Boy, wouldn't it be wonderful if Ronnie came and was with this road. That's it from here, WW4TLB.
Good Ragtru Thomas, and I want to thank you for all the phone calls and everything from yesterday through today and helping me with information and ideas and stuff. That has meant a lot, and you've been a big help. So I appreciate it quite a bit. And Mark Gibson chimed in. He says he's got a ham friend in a wheelchair that went to school with Danny, and he told me that Danny would push him and he would tell him where to go. So that was pretty interesting as well. And Rose says, thanks to everyone who is saying such great things about Danny. He was remarkable, talented, but humble man who will never be replaced. I agree 100%. And I wanted to just recap real quick, now that I've got the funeral stuff correct. The visitation is March the 6th, which is Wednesday, 12 noon at the McCullers Church, and that's 133 Rand Road, Raleigh. Funeral the following at 1 o'clock. And I plan to be there with Susan, and as I'm sure most other people that can make it will be there. Let's go pick up Wallace. He had a scratchy signal, so hopefully he's a little better. K4ITL. Wallace, you're up.
Thank you, Charles. I now have a better signal. I think I didn't realize I had an antenna disconnected from the storms I thought were coming the other day. I just want to make this quick. I've never got the opportunity to meet Danny, but I've often heard or had long heard a lot of great things about him. I just want to offer my condolences to his family and to his many friends around here tonight. I hope his memories stay with you for many years. K4SKA.
Thanks, Wallace. You had a great signal that time. Great audio, and I thank you for joining us tonight. The net's clear with K4SKA. We're down to number 8 out of 26. And I remind people on the Facebook video, you can add comments, and I'll read them on the air. Tell stories, whatever you want, and I will repeat it here on the net. So let's go to Joe, W4TTO. I'm sure he's known Danny for a long time, probably longer than me. Joe, you're up.
KI4DCR, W4TTO, Joe here in Lake Forest. Well, thanks for calling this special net, Charles. Much appreciated.
So Ronnie Millsap has been
and like just about everybody else, shock and disbelief set in last night, and reflection today.
He was Danny's best friend.
And I don't think I've known Danny longer than you. I got licensed in 2004, but shortly after I got licensed, I talked to Danny on the radio periodically, and he, if I had a problem, he was able to walk me through it, and he always had good advice and always found the time to work with people. He's certainly going to be missed by many of us. In fact, Randy and I were talking to him last week on this same repeater, just rag chewing, just like we do periodically once in a while with Danny. And I was very pleased to be able to attend that Christmas luncheon that you put together in Zebulon. I think that was either December 2019 or December 2020, right before COVID. And Danny and Rose were there, and I saw them, and I went over and talked to them at their table, and it was just a wonderful gathering. I think Cindy and I sat next to you and Susan, I believe, at our table.
You did, yep.
And I think David was next to us, K4ITL. He's certainly going to be missed. Danny helped me out a couple of times working on a radio problem over the air and on the telephone. I spoke to Danny a couple of times on the phone talking about a problem I was having at the time. Anyway, certainly going to miss him. I really don't know what else to say. I hope that the call sign is retired forever, just like they do on a baseball team. Sometimes they retire a number. Well, I hope K4ITL lives on forever as Danny Hampton. So thanks for calling, Annette, Charles, and thanks to everybody else who's given rag shoes and whatever. I'm out of words, Charles. W4TTO, back to you.
Thanks, Joe. And yeah, I keep forgetting you have so much more knowledge of HF and radio than I do, that we were licensed around the same time. But I consider you to be on a whole nother level of radio than me. So that's why I said that. But Rose also says that Ronnie Millsap is sick, but he's not able to travel, but they've notified him and he will have many fond memories of the teenage stunts that Danny and him had. And Brian Crocker, KM4OX, he says they once snuck across the street to Pullen Park, got on the train and got it started. They somehow made it back and to school. It's one of the fond memories. I say, yeah, that's pretty funny. It sounds like something I would do. But yeah, it's nice to have all these folks. And yet it was 2019 December that we had that, and what a turnout we had. And little did we know that we were going to be literally kind of sheltered in place for a couple of years right after that. So the timing on that was impeccable. And I had told Susan, I said, well, there may come a time when we can't gather like this, not knowing, of course, that something was going to happen. It may have been just some kind of weird intuition. So let's go to Randy, KE4PNT.
Hello, Charles. I appreciate this, Matt. I'm not technically gifted. I'm a philosopher. But Danny would often take the time to talk to me and Joe during our lunchtime talks. And he would give me a call on the radio. And it was always such a treat when that happened. But I think he enjoyed my skewed perspective of reality. And I didn't bother him too much with technical stuff. One time I was talking about trying to get the audio on my HF radio right, and he offered to get on HF and help me. That never happened, but he was just always willing to help. And it's going to take an army of people to do for amateur radio what Danny did. A lot of people are going to have to step up and take care of some repeaters to keep them functional. And just replacing him, no one person is ever going to replace Danny. Thank you, Charles. K4PNT.
Thanks, Randy. I've got a couple more comments from the Facebook group. Steve Costanelli says, I used to talk to Danny when I was in tower work, when I was in the Raleigh and Wilmington area. He's very shocked and saddened as well. And Herb Hartley, Danny Hampton had a heart and a love for ham radio. He certainly did. I remember traveling up in the mountains with Susan and all different kinds of places. We went in North Carolina, and you could almost always go somewhere where you'd hear Danny's voice on the ID of a repeater. And this was way back in like 2010, 11. And I was like, wow, that's Danny's voice. And we're like, north of Asheville somewhere. We were up near Williamsburg, Virginia, Roanoke Rapids, different places. And you'd hear that familiar voice giving an ID. All right, we had N4YFU. John inside the bell line was in and out. N0RNE. Jeff up in Henderson, you were up, my friend. Go ahead, pick it up.
It's been a rough week for ham radio. Not only has Danny become a silent key, but last Friday, Fred Winter, K4LXW, also became a silent key. I'm not sure how much any folks know Mr. Fred, but he was a pretty solid voice over in the Tar River area in Rocky Mount. I finally got to meet Danny and Miss Rose at your birthday party. That was pretty good. That was quite exciting. First time actually meeting him in person. Danny talked with me a couple of times on the radio. We didn't know each other real well, but he did talk with me a few times. And I'm just recovering back from a cold. But I didn't want to miss this net. All in memorial for him. And without him, I wouldn't know most of the people that are here that I'm talking to tonight. Thank you, Danny, for the work you've done and the effort you've gone through and the repeater systems that you've put up. You will always be missed. With that, I'll turn it back over to Nick. It's Zero already.
Jeff, it was a true honor. I don't know of anybody that I know of, it's been in ham radio or anything else, that had 25 or 26 people at a birthday party, and all but 2 or maybe 1 were ham radio people. It was very, very heartwarming, I guess would be the words. I was stunned, shocked, and beyond surprised. The funniest thing about it was, remember, we were all leaving and the WTVD helicopter was hovering right over top of the restaurant. But that was truly a great time, and I want to thank Thomas Babb, Martin Brossman, KI4CFS, for taking a ton of pictures at that, and that's where this picture of Danny came from. I'm pretty sure this is Thomas's work. Could have been Martin's, but there were so many pictures. I took them and uploaded them all to a photo sharing site. So they're good pictures of everybody, but this one especially of Danny's my favorite. He just looked so happy and radiant in that picture. Another person to check in and out is Steve Costanelli. He is N4JTH in Surfside Beach, South Carolina. We've got 30 some watchers on the Facebook live stream. I've never had this many. It's incredible. Jeff, well said about all of that. The next was Susan in Raleigh, WA4AKB. You were up.
Okay, I've known Danny for a long time. I think I was about 12 years old when I first knew him. Didn't start doing math here, but I was not licensed yet. My father is W4YDY, and he's probably listening, and some of you probably know him. And it was around 1970, he put the first repeater up in Raleigh, and it was on what was then the BB&T building, which is now, it was Capital Bank building one time, but I don't know what it is now, but it's now eclipsed by all of the other buildings. And I got to knowing him about that time. Then in 79, I was first licensed in 74. And in 79, I went to state in electrical engineering. And about that time, he was putting together the first network system of repeaters, which became PCRN later. And at that time, the codes were actually kind of kept a little bit quiet. But he had given my dad and me the codes. I was in Raleigh. My dad who was from Raleigh, actually was living in the western part of the state at the time. so we could link up and talk on 2 meters, so I could talk to him from my dorm room. Although I usually talk to my dad from W4ATC on HF, but I've just known Danny forever. He's like one of the few people I know that everything I've ever heard about him, said about him was positive. I've learned a lot from him over the years. I think he and Rose were just the cutest and most ultimate couple I've ever seen, and I met her a few times at some ARRL meetings. I do the web work for North Carolina ARRL, so I was at the meetings that he was at as technical director, and I was just shocked because it just seemed like Danny would always be around because I've known him since childhood, and I'm a lot past that now since that was like 1970, and now I guess it's like 50 years, over 50 years later.
What an excellent rag chew, and thanks for joining us on this net and sharing your memories. As I said, my biggest regret was not getting into the hobby earlier, because I started getting interested in it, and I moved back to Raleigh, got divorced in 1997, I think it was. And I ran across this frequency, 147.27. It was a JARS. And I thought, what's up with this? And it was Byron and a Van and BJ, and I thought, man, this is fun. These guys are cool. They're always making jokes and talking about funny stuff. But why in the world it took me like 7 or 8 more years to get a license? I met Martin Brossman, K4ITL, and he said, let's team up, study together, and go get our license. And we did. We drove down to Smithfield, and both passed with no problem. And I'm getting ready to take my general here shortly. And Martin called me today. He says, oh, you should do that as a tribute to Danny and go ahead and step up and get your general. So that's what I'm going to do.
Well, I have one funny story about him.
Yeah, go right ahead.
Back in my first, I guess right after I started college in '79, was got a ride to the Shelby Ham Fest with Billy Edwards and Walt Short, and then they and Danny, along with Danny, rode up to where my dad was working at in Maiden, North Carolina. And I was talking to my dad on the 2-meter repeater there. And he said, well, who's bringing you? He said, well, who's driving you here? Danny picks up the microphone and says, I am.
That's funny. And somebody else had told me a joke similar to that a while back about something that said, Danny, take the wheel. But yeah, that was a good one. You've definitely got some good stories about Danny, and you've got a good signal and great audio, good voice for radio too, sounding good. And I appreciate you joining us. I'm going to move to Van, KM4TC. Good evening. Sorry that this is the occasion we got to get together, but pick it up and let's hear your stories about Danny.
All right, Charles. Thank you so much for doing this. This is great. We had a little bit of something on 27 for him last night, but very small. It was so new, mainly just announcements, but a few people talked about him some, and this is great. I got to know Danny through my Elmer, Bill Lambert, AK4H, back in the late 80s. I was licensed in 87, and I was a little intimidated by him to start with, too, because I didn't hear him. When he came on the air, he was as friendly as he could be and helpful and all that stuff, but he was just like famous, which he really is in the ham world. As a matter of fact, in 2009, he got the Dayton Hamvention Amateur of the Year award, which that's the international award. He's one out of 3 million people that got it that year won, because there's roughly, or at least now, about 3 million hams in the world. So that's a big deal. But I got to know him through Bill, and over the years got to know him better. And what's amazing, he knew me a lot better than I knew him for a long time, because he listens. That's something I want the new hams that maybe never got a chance to speak to him. He was there. There was nothing that went on in my life that I talked about that he didn't know about. I mean, Tammy could have the flu or something, and the next time I talked to him, he'd be asking me, did Tammy get over the flu? And he didn't forget anything either. It's just amazing. And, somebody mentioned that when, there's a lot of, it's going to take a lot of shoes or a lot of feet to fill his shoes, or a lot of it's going to take it because he lived it. He enjoyed it, and he was just a great man. And he and Bill, my Elmer, were friends since high school, young teenagers, and had been talking on the radio all those years. And Bill was pretty good too. He wasn't on Danny's level, but they loved each other. They were like brothers. And Bill got dementia back. It's been almost a decade ago, and that was hard on Danny. It was hard on all of us. Somewhere there's a picture of him on his last visit to Danny, and I can't remember where I saw it. I was looking to see if it was on Rhodes stuff, but I hope I'm getting in. I'm on a handheld because I had a breakdown here in the shack. And my display went out on my rig, and I had to scramble, Charles, to get something to get on the air here. But I'm glad I made it. I hope I'm still getting in. I am on a handheld. I do have it hooked up to my Yankee, which a dog has chewed up my control cable, and it's pointed in the wrong direction. So I'm hoping I'm getting in. Anyway, I can't say a whole lot else that anybody else hadn't said, although I've spent many hours on the phone with Danny. And as the years went on, I really got to know him real well. A little over 20 years ago when he joined the Auburn Repeater Corporation with us, Bill's health was declining, and he wanted Danny to join, and Danny joined in with us. And he had big plans for these machines with COVID and everything. And we've not been able to make them happen. Big plans for 2.7, 2.1, 8.8, and the digital repeater and the 220 repeater. It was just something to hear what he had planned, and it was a good plan. But wasn't able to make it happen. I'm hoping we can make it happen. And I got one funny story that I think everybody can get a kick out of. Danny, he spoke his mind too, and he something. I mean, he could be pretty blunt at times, not in a bad way. You respected him for it. You listened when he talked too.
Absolutely.
But one Saturday, I was playing with an old IC-21, old crystal-controlled ICOM that I like to play with once in a while. And there was a couple of guys on the air with me, and they were trying to tell me I don't have any test equipment. I was tuning those crystals, trying to get it better on frequency because they said I sounded tinty. And I was kind of listening too on a receiver and trying to get it zeroed in. And they were saying, "You're still off frequency. You're still off frequency." But my phone rang, and it was Danny. And it's so funny. He says, "You're not off frequency. These guys don't know what they're listening to. You're not off frequency. You sound like crap." And I think he didn't use that word, but you're not off frequency. And he went on we stayed on the phone a while. He helped me determine it was the microphone that was causing most of the problem. Anyway, my life is better for knowing him, and I'm going to miss him. Thanks, Charles. K4TCR, KM4TC.
Van Brian Crocker said that picture was on Rose's page, he thinks. And great stories, great record. You're getting into the repeater full scale. I mean, no issues whatsoever. I want to acknowledge a few other people that checked in real quick. KO4MSN, Randall Edge, WA4BAN, Rick from up in Youngsville, Hector, W2NPR. Hector says, we will miss Danny exponentially. A giant amateur radio. Glad to have known and met Danny, and thankful for Ms. Rose. Let Danny come and play with us. Hi, hi. Rest easy, Danny. Also, Danny Mustin. Little story from him. A radio shop technician that used to work for Danny told me the story of a particular radio problem with no audio. Knowing Danny had memorized the schematics and the parts locations on the circuit board in his head, which was in itself amazing. But after 2 hours of troubleshooting the problem, the tech reported he'd replaced many components without any success. So Danny felt inside the radio and said to the tech, "Did you replace IC201? The tech said, "Yes, about 2 hours ago." Danny said, "Well, you must have installed it backwards." Favorite story. Thanks, Danny. That was a good one. All right, man, this is awesome. We have way more people than I ever thought we'd get. A lot on the radio and a lot on Facebook. So let's throw it out again. We're just at the bottom of the first round and we're at 28 check-ins. So anybody else? Let's start with radio check-ins first that are here on the repeater. Anybody wants to join us? I'm going to a second sheet of paper and I'm ready.
WA4OSS.
I've got Charlie and Nightdale, WA4OSS. Anybody else? Any station, A through Z?
WB4TQD, Mike and Raleigh.
All right, let's go with these two stations. If anybody wants to check in via Facebook, you can text me now. If you got any stories, go ahead and send them. And while these two are doing their rag chews, I will get them online and get ready to bring them online if you have anything. So let's go to Charlie and Nightdale, WA4OSS first, and then we'll pick up Mike next.
WA4OSS. Well, good evening, everyone. I can't be here at net time most of the time now. I've been out here too long already. I need to get back up with the young lady here and to stay pretty close in, look after her. However, I got down here when Joe was talking, so I found out what the subject was. I think I knew Danny from sometime in the 60s, from then on. And I used to take him to a lot of club meetings and around a lot, as Mike would remember, because Mike come along a little bit later during that time, but had a lot of good times there. And one of the good stories, I think this may have been before Mike's time, was there was a bunch of steakhouses, 2 or 3 around Raleigh called Jack's. And one night before we were going to the Kerry club meeting, about 3 or 4, 5, sometimes 6 of us would go out and eat together. And we were eating out of Jack's on the south side of town. And they got the orders mixed up. And of course, Danny loves steak, as y'all probably know. So they brought an extra one, and it was one of the largest they had. And the guy said, well, anybody want it, you can have it. So Danny ate his steak and that extra large steak, which I've always enjoyed
Wow.
thinking about that. And then I went to the Shelby Ham Fest one time. There was about 5 or 6 of us together, and Danny was in the group. And we came back. We stopped at Danny's parents' home. His daddy loved to fish. And Danny's parents had prepared a meal for all of us there. And Danny and myself and a couple of 3 other hams enjoyed a evening meal after the Shelby Ham Fest. At that time, it was still in Cedar Park. And another time, we were talking, and Danny asked me about something in the cabinet. He wanted me to tell him where it was, in the kitchen. And it was canned food. And I said, well, Danny, how do you usually know what you get? And he said, well, before the kids were born, and the kids were born to his first wife, him and Sandy, he said, wasn't any problem because we put them in a certain place. But he said, now the kids are climbing up on stuff. He said, they mix them cans up. So sometimes we don't know what we're going to open it up and eat. And I could tell a few more, but we'll stop because I need to run, and everybody don't want to hear them all anyway. WA4OSS.
I'll tell you, Charlie, that was good. And my thing with Danny was I would tell Susan, I said, well, I need to call Danny and talk to him about something. And she'd say, well, don't do it now because we got to leave and go do this. And she said, you guys will be on the phone for 2 or 3 hours. Because I remember about a year ago, I called him about something, maybe 2 years ago. And he and I got to talking about people we'd known and back in the old days and all this. And we ended up talking for, I know it was 2 hours. My cell phone, I had to put on a connected to power because it was dying and not working. But it would, I never even thought about the time when we were talking on the phone like that. It flew by. I want to pick up this other station real quick that just checked in by Facebook and just acknowledge him. W4JSK Scott in RTP. and I've got you in and out. So let's go to WB4TQD, Mike. Several people have asked me for your contact information today, and I want to go ahead and get you on board and tell us about Danny and just give us your attitude.
All right. Well, evening, everybody. Yeah, about my best story about Danny is a lot of people don't realize that he went up on 2,000-foot TV towers to do work on repeaters. And I first met him back in '78 when I was graduating from NC State. And starting from about then till mid-'90s, we'd get together almost every week and build stuff in his basement, test radios, and do all sorts of stuff. But anyway, one time Danny wanted to go down to look at a new repeater site. It's on a 2,000-foot tower down east. So I took him down there during the week. We got down there, and Danny was about as calm and relaxed on the tower as you could imagine. He didn't have to worry about looking down. So anyway, I just led him over to where the ladder up to the first level of the tower support structure was, and said, okay, there's a ladder here with 12 rungs on it, and then it ends up on a platform with a railing. When you get to that railing, turn left, go about 10 feet, and there's another ladder of 15 rungs, and then you'll be at another platform that has a railing, and just wait for me there. And I turned him loose, and he climbed on up, figured out which way to go, and got all the way up there. And by that time, I'd gotten the car unloaded and everything hauled up the tower. And I loaded up the elevator and got him in the elevator. To get in the elevator in the tower, you got to step over about a 2-foot wide opening from the platform into the elevator car. And
Wow.
There's nothing except open space below that. And anyway, up the tower we went. And we got to where he wanted to stop, and he told me what level. And when the elevator got there, I said, stop. And he'd hit the stop button and stop the elevator. I'd say, okay, you're about 6 inches above the platform. And he'd stick his foot out, and he'd feel around with his toe, with his shoe, and find where the platform was, and grab onto the ladder that was just outside the elevator there, step over. I'd tell him, okay, you're on a platform grading, and there's a cross beam about head high, about a foot in front of you, and you've got platform all the way out to the railing, and it's about 4 feet out, and he would go navigate his way out, feeling with his foot every step of the way, and find where the cross members were. And once he made a mental map in his memory of what that tower level looked like, he was perfectly fine there. He didn't have to worry about him. He'd navigate around. He knew where to step and where not to step, and he was as comfortable as you could ever be. And that just amazes me to the day that he could do all that, because he had to keep it all in his mind where everything was. And so, anyway, like I say, he was very confident, and he could remember all the different towers, the different layouts of them and everything. So how he kept that straight in his mind, I don't know. Anyway, that's my story in WB4TQD.
I know. I didn't even know Danny was blind till the first couple of years I got licensed, and I thought, this guy is doing all this stuff. I felt so, I don't know, kind of lazy or not utilizing my mind and body like I should, because I thought, if this man is doing all this, this is truly amazing, because he was doing more without eyesight than I could do with it. And like you said, he could remember stuff. He knew the circuit boards and the diagrams where parts were located. Just absolutely incredible. And Brian Crocker added, it was a true story. One time his kids took the labels off the cans, and it was a mystery dinner for a week. Thanks, Mike. I really appreciate you joining us tonight, and thanks for all you do for the hobby as well. We had David Miller, good friend of mine up in Butner, Creedmoor area, WA4IZG. And he's in and out, but he's watching us on the Facebook. A bunch of other people. I think we've had about 50 views on the live stream so far. So I'll throw it out one more time and see if we can get anybody else. It's about 2 minutes away, 3 minutes away from 8 o'clock. Last call. Anybody else want to join the net tonight? Please call KI4DCR.
KI4DCR, WA4ITL, Brocken Lake Forest 4. Repeat again.
K4DCR. This is K4JDR, Ronnie. Check me in.
All right, I've got Brock with a recheck, WA4IHM. I'll be right back to you. I got Ronnie, K4JDR. Thanks for coming on board. I've got you marked in. We'll pick up Brock, and then we'll go to Ronnie. Brock, you're up.
Okay, Charles, I tell you, it's been everything about Danny has been just, I've learned things that I didn't know. The wife and I, we grew up over there, back in the 70s, over there on the south of Raleigh, and when Sandy, like I said, Danny's first wife, had Keith and Lynn, their children, and Keith and my son Mark were playing together. They were, probably only 2 or 3 years old, and of course now they're grown up and everything else. And Lynn, my daughter Tracy, was still a baby, too small to play with her, but got so many good memories of that. And Danny and I used to go down to the BB&T building downtown and have them work on, just watch him work on the repeaters. He's just amazing guy, no doubt about it. His knowledge and stuff, he taught me an awful lot. But it's been really nice hearing all what everybody had to say about it. WA4IHM, back to net control.
Thanks, Brock. And yeah, I'm going to read a little something at the end of the net that I kind of wrote up about Danny. It's not real long, but and then I'm going to go back over the funeral arrangements and all that at the end of the net so that we have those correct. But I appreciate you coming back in and doing a rag chew. I appreciate it a lot, and I appreciate you talking to me on the phone last night. You were one of the first ones I thought to call. I called a lot of people, but nobody answers their phone anymore, and you were the first one that picked up. All right, K4JDR, Ronnie. Wish it were better circumstances, but good to have you on board, and you're up.
K4DCR and Danette. Yeah, it's been a difficult day, I must say. Difficult last night as well. So, at any rate, surely going to miss him. Learned a lot from him, and he just was one of the 7th wonders of the world as far as I'm concerned. Surely a privilege to know him. He served on our board at SECN, and many things, a lot of late night phone calls and things like that. He was a night owl, and so am I. I've still been on fireman's schedule ever since. But I really are going to miss him at young kid, along with many people, and probably, I guess, one of the biggest things is saying that he is a real inspiration to those people that have any, what they call disabilities. He's a total inspiration for that, just look what he could do. And the story you told that Danny Mustin talked about, I heard that too. And I actually heard he put his finger in there and looked at and felt of it. I always say look at it. And Danny would always say, oh, good seeing you and all this. But anyhow, Danny felt of it, felt that chip, and he said, well, you put it in backwards. And so he was correct. That's the story that I heard. he was always good. And but at any rate, I'll say 7-3 to all. And thank you for doing this, Ned. This makes me feel real good this evening to listen to all this, and I'm sure Rose feels the same way. Good evening, everyone. It's K4JDR.
Well, Ronnie, I hope that any of the rest of us, we all got to go sometime, but I hope that when we do, that somebody cares enough about us to acknowledge us and share stories about us. It needs to be done. Too many people now do everything by Facebook or Messenger or text or all this, and they don't gather and they don't get on the radio as much. So this was great, and the participation has exceeded anything that I could possibly imagine. So I'm going to pull my, you bear with me a second. I have to go back to, I was trying to get to my notes to read this last thing when I'm ready. But I'm still getting some check-ins here on Facebook. I've got Trip, N4NTO. He's down in Tarboro. Says, I'm really, really, really going to miss Danny. Thanks, Trip. Always good to have you on board. I'll do it again and see if we've got anybody else before I start going into the little thing that I wrote up and the also the funeral arrangements. Anybody else want to join us here on the radio, please call KI4DCR. Not hearing anybody else, I will say that on Wednesday evening, February 28th, 2024, our friend Danny Hampton earned his wings and left this earth to dance in the skies on silvered wings and to touch the face of God. He now joins in heaven his family that have departed. Danny was the radio man. He could tell you what the issue was with your setup by just listening and would always provide a solution. His name is on repeaters far and near and is echoed throughout the ham radio community worldwide. He's done so much for the hobby that I could never even cover a portion of it in tonight's time frame. There was so much more to Danny's life that could be shared here, and I'm sure each of us has fond memories that we will never forget, as he was an extremely personable and technically savvy fellow despite any disability that he ever had. I know Danny's in a much better place now, as I have been taught. Danny has touched the face of God, and he's also with the family departed, as I and you will be there someday, and we'll see him again. Peace be with us all, and rest in peace, Danny. And I'm not going to say final call, but K4ITL, we will always be thinking of you, and you will always be in our hearts. And I had a little bit of help with that. I used a little part of WA3UTC's eulogy to one of the hams that he used and just reworded and added a bunch of my own stuff to it. But Charlie was real good at doing those, and I miss him. And Fred Winter, K4LXW, I think his services are on Saturday of this weekend. I'm going to try to go to the visitation tomorrow night. But yes, it's been a very tough week. Fred was a super cool guy. I'll never forget when we were putting up the tower down there just west of Rocky Mount, the 14718, I think it is. One July day back in like 2018, I think it was. It was like 100 degrees, and we were all down there. Murray Adams and the crew, and I brought a bunch of drinks and a cooler of ice water, and we had such a good time. Even though it was hot, we had a good time because we were doing something we enjoyed. All right, so the visitation, as I have it, is Wednesday, March 6th, 12 o'clock, McCullers Community Baptist Church, 133 Rand Road, Raleigh, North Carolina. I will post all this on the Facebook. I may not get to it until tomorrow, because I've had a long day at work and trying to put this together and a bunch of other stuff going on around here, but I will have it on there probably when I wake up at 4:30 like I usually do. The funeral will follow at 1 p.m. at the same location. That's Wednesday, March 6th, 1 p.m., McCullers Community Church at 133 Rand Road, Raleigh. If there's anything else, any final comments, rechecks, please call now. All right, I don't really have anything else. And I agree. Brian Crocker said his blindness was not an impairment, just a part of life. And yes, I am far more impaired being able to see than Danny was blind. I mean, he's accomplished so much that I before all this happened, I would sit sometimes and just think about it when I'm hearing him on the radio. And I thought, how in the world does he do all this? It's just beyond belief. But he was always there, and we appreciate everything he's done, both with and Rose too, and his family. And I want to encourage everybody to please try and attend the visitation and the funeral next Wednesday, if you possibly can. Too many people are too busy nowadays, and I've been one of those for years, and I'm trying to be better about that and attend these memorial services and funerals. So 146.88. If you punch that into Facebook, you'll get on the group. If you want to join it, I think it automatically adds a lot of people. I monitor it like all the time. So if you want to get on there, just send a request. We'll get you on there, and I'll put all this information on there. Starting to lose my voice and get choked up. But we had a total of about 39 check-ins, including all the internet people and, of course, myself. And thanks to my wife, Susan, for helping me write some of this up. I can talk real well, but I'm not the best at trying to word it out. So she helped me out with that a lot. And I wanted to read something from Martin Brossman, K4ITL. He also was very shocked. And he said, we cannot mention Danny without mentioning his wonderful wife, Rose Hampton, who survived him and always supported Danny in being a nonstop contribution to our amateur radio community. If you could not make the net, feel free to comment on Facebook. And they're going to honor Danny again on the Echolink net, which is next Monday at 6 p.m. That's Echolink only. It's on the N4AED-L link. Thanks to Richard for hosting that at 6 p.m. I thought it used to be at 6:30, but maybe it's at 6 now. That's what Martin's got on here, so I'm going to go with 6. But I'll be on there, and that's at Monday. I'll post all that on the Facebook as well. One last call. Anybody else got any comments or final thoughts, and then I'll close it out. All right, I want to thank everybody. A lot of people have called me, sent me friend requests. They've offered to help with different things, and I've let Rose know if there's anything Susan and I can do. We're actually going to go and visit with her on Saturday for a little bit. But again, if you could possibly make the services next week, I know the family would very much appreciate it, as all of us in the amateur radio community and those that aren't even in the community that still knew Danny could come. That would be great. So this is KI4DCR paying final respects for now to K4ITL Danny, and see you guys next Wednesday at the service, and I will return this repeater to normal amateur radio use. I don't think it'll ever be as normal as it was when Danny was around, but we'll try. KI4DCR 73.
Great job, Charles. Tell me you did before. TLB quick.
Thanks, Thomas. Brock's calling me on the phone, but I'm going to leave the live stream up for a minute and leave the radio on. Hello? It was a lot to put together for the amount of time I had, but it was something that needed to be done, and I wanted to do it. And it worked out good that tonight was the net, and it was fresh on everybody's mind. And, somebody said, well, wait till next week. And I said, no, I don't want to do that, because I'm afraid that people will get busy and they'll forget, and they'll forget about the net and all that. This was the perfect time to do it.